Why do people enjoy stories? Or another question, why do people read stories? I asked this question as my first podcast episode ever, and I just want to go back to it because I've got something to say about why people might read stories or listen or watch or whatever it is. Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppie. You can find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. If it is your first time here, How to Write Good is a writing podcast that seeks to find principles and advice that can be applied across a broad range of writing situations. If you've been here before, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button below, and share. So when you think about why people engage with books or why people engage with stories, you probably have a few things that go through your head. And I have one specific thing that goes through my head a lot. But a few things that go through your head are probably for the entertainment value or the craft of the story. Or what goes through my head most of the time is that people engage with books most for escapism. And people actually say they engage with books for these various reasons. But I think that most of the time, when people say they do something for a specific reason, it's actually an even deeper reason, and they don't actually think about it too long. They just think, oh yeah, that's why it seems to be the case, why I do this specific thing, so this is why I do it. And it's a very surface level understanding, and it's not a knock on people. I just think that in a lot of cases, people don't have time to think about those specific aspects. To be honest, how important is why you read a book? I like books. I like stories. Why should I think about why I do it if I like it? Okay. But in certain cases, it is very important to understand why you do things. For example, why do you go on social media? You might think it's to connect with your friends, but some social medias are set up in a way to actually get you addicted to them. Okay. I'm just going to say it. So some social medias are more insidious than others, and they implement certain things to get you addicted. And it's the same thing with video games. There are certain things within certain video games, I'm not talking about all of them, certain video games are set up to make it like a casino. They're trying to make it like gambling so that you get addicted to that specific thing, and then you will play it again and again and again. Reading books isn't as insidious as playing certain video games or certain social media sites. But at the same time, I think it is still important to understand why people do specific things within their lives, especially if these things are very prominent within humanity as a whole. So if you think about it, how often do you engage with stories? How often do you engage with media that is in story form? And you'd probably say quite often. How often do you watch movies? How often do you watch television? How often do you read books? How often do you play video games? How often do you listen to audiobooks, etc.? These things are always in story form, right? So you are probably engaging with stories in some form a lot throughout your life. And since that aspect, that thing that we call a story, is so prevalent within humanity, I think it's important to understand why people engage with it. And this view I have of why people engage with stories might not be the case for every single person, but I think it's probably the case for more people than not, right? This is a different perspective, but I think this covers the different reasons why people engage, but I think it covers it on a deeper level. But I want to ask another question before I answer the question of why I think people engage with stories or why people read or love stories so much. So why do people go traveling, right? Why do people go to other places? Because it's a very expensive thing, but people get addicted to it. I don't think they necessarily do, but you know what I mean. It's the colloquial term of addiction. People like it so much they want to go again and again and again. They get a travel bug, as it were. I think people go traveling because they want different experiences. It's not necessarily about fun. It's not necessarily about the novelty, but I think the novelty plays into it. I think it's about this idea that you're taken out of your world and you're placed in another world that is completely different than your own. And it used to be the case that people were able to go so far away from their world. They were able to go so far away from what they knew that they actually didn't need to travel because they were in a constant state of traveling. They were in a constant state of newness. Imagine if you were a pioneer in the 1800s, right? And you went out west and you are with your family in a coach or whatever they call it, in a wagon, and you've got your family and you've got you, and everything around you is just, it's a lot of nothing, right? There are some people who live out in this area, but it's nothing that you've known. It's all this wilderness. It's all these different types of animals. It's anything can happen. Anything can be out here. And I think that's the same idea. I think there's an excitement with this newness, but I don't think it's just novelty. I think it's just this idea that we are being transported to a different world. And I think that's what traveling does to people. It transports them to a different world. And even if they have a bad time during that trip, they still have a different experience. I think that is similar to why people engage with stories. I don't necessarily think it's just because of entertainment or escapism or the story itself. I think people generally engage with stories because it's a portal to a different place, right? It is a portal for the reader. It is a portal that takes you to sometimes mundane situations, but you aren't going through that specific situation. Sometimes the world you enter into is very similar to your own world, and sometimes the world you enter into is vastly different than your own world. But it doesn't just offer entertainment, it offers a doorway into something else. And even if you have heartbreak, even if you get your heart broken when you're reading a book, you still have this engagement with it, right? Even if there are things that the main character goes through that's difficult, or even if that book has a sad ending, you still have this experience that happens within the book. And I think that this goes back to what art is at its core, but I think this is especially true for storytelling and books, right? I think this is especially true for storytelling. Art tries to bring you into a different experience, and I think that storytelling brings you into a different experience following after what art is. So that's what I've got. That's my idea. What do you think? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? I would love to hear your ideas of why you disagree or agree, because I don't know. I think about this a lot, and it's very important to me because the better I understand why people read and the better I understand why people engage with stories, the better I can craft stories that people are going to want to engage with. If you enjoyed this, you're probably wondering how you can support me. Well, you can actually do two simple things. Follow the first link below to grab a copy of my book, and then follow the second link and sign up for my newsletter. It's that simple. Those two things will mean the world to me and give me more time to write books and create content for you. As always, my name is Daniel Poppie, and this is How to Write Good.